How did that go? Did you make a decision? Now I want you to think about grammar. I know that this will just be revision for most of you, but I planned this lesson before you took the placement tests. In this conversation, you are discussing some options. When we do this in English, we often use modal verbs. Modal verbs are used with other verbs to express ideas such as possibility or obligation that are not expressed by the main verb. I'm going to present 6 phrases that you could use in the task you've just completed, and I'll focus on the modal verb for each. We should go somewhere that's not too formal. Should is the most commonly used modal verb when giving advice, I think. So there's not much for me to say about it. All modal verbs are followed by the bare infinitive form of the verb. This means the infinitive without to. We should go, you should be happy. Also, the verb doesn't change if the subject changes. I should be happy, you should be happy, he should be happy, etc. Let's move on. I don't think we should go to the Indian restaurant. He doesn't like spicy food. Okay, this is more interesting. You could say, we shouldn't go to the Indian restaurant. But that feels a bit direct, and that makes some people feel uncomfortable. I'm not sure why, but this is the only way that I would make a negative suggestion. Not the only way, but there's only one other way I'd use in this situation, and I'll get to that later. So we use I think and I don't think to kind of soften our opinions in these conversations. The next example is similar. Do you think we could just get a takeaway? In this question, I'm asking for your opinion. By using think, again, it's quite informal and allows you to express opinions that you're not sure about. I also included this so I could present the contraction do you think. Do you think? Do you think? Do you think we could? It's really contracted. Do you becomes you and we becomes we. Let's move on to the next phrase. We could try the Italian. We use could in this way to make a suggestion. We're not saying that we think it's a good idea. I mean, I guess we don't think it's a terrible idea, or we wouldn't even suggest it. But when we use could, we're not saying that we think it's the best option, merely that it's possible. We use could to raise the possibility. We ought to think about what she'd like to eat. This is not strictly a modal verb because you have to include the to. It's followed by a full infinitive and not just the bare infinitive. I think we use ought to in exactly the same way as should. It expresses something that we think is a good idea. There is a slight difference. I think ought to is used more to express that something is a good idea that everyone knows, or at least as some kind of authority has suggested. You can use it in a negative way, but not in this sort of conversation. The pronunciation is ought to, with a glottal stop in place of the first T. Ought to. The last phrase I want to talk about is, we'd better choose the Mexican. I think that's the safest choice. Had better is the strongest modal phrase. If you had better do something, it suggests that there might be a problem if you don't do it. I read a description of had better that said it can be used as a threat. You'd better listen to me. If you don't, well... In this conversation, I think it's a good phrase to use when you have discussed the options and want to make a decision. I said earlier that there was another negative form that you could use. I think it would make sense to say, we'd better not go to the Italian restaurant. Perhaps your friend is part Italian and would not appreciate their food heritage being mistreated in the UK. We'd better not. This is stronger than I don't think we should, but they can both be used to make negative suggestions. Okay, With this language in mind, I want you to repeat the task again. I'm going to change the restaurants, so you'll have to keep thinking. At the end of this speaking task, I want you to reflect on your performance and assess yourself. In fact, I want you to assess yourself and your partner. When the speaking task is finished, in the final minute of the stage, the chat window will close and there will be a form. You need to think about how well you performed the task. There are 4 areas for you to assess. First, your vocabulary. Did you use a good range of vocabulary? Did you talk about different restaurants and different types of food? Did you use lots of describing words? After you've assessed yourself, I'd like you to think about your partner. How did they do? Were they better than you? Or did you do better? Give yourself a mark from 1 to 10 and then give your partner a mark. After that, I want you to do the same for grammar. Did you use a wide range of grammar? Did you use different phrasal verbs? Were you accurate? And how was your partner? Then, I want you to assess your pronunciation. How natural did you sound? How about your partner? And finally, I want you to assess your fluency. How well did you perform? Did you have lots of pauses? Were you easy to understand? And how about your partner? Okay, so you'll have 3 minutes to complete the speaking task and 1 minute to complete the assessment. So remember, you're talking to a friend about where to take your friend out for a special meal. Off you go.